Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. On behalf of myself, Eric Hansen, and all of us here at OTT.X, we are so happy that you're joining us today. Whether you're watching live or on demand, it's a privilege to share with you the experience, insights, and wisdom from the people that are shaping the OTT CTV industry. Speaking of the people that are doing just that, in today's session, we are joined by ElementalTV's Chief Revenue Officer, Albert Yu, and Chief Strategy Officer, Shafi Mustafa, for a deep dive into how publishers can better understand their audiences from a media buyer's perspective. They'll discuss key concepts of supply addressability, inventory merchandising, and empowering a publisher to sell their audiences effectively at scale. Welcome, Albert, Shafi. How's it going?
Good, Eric. Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. Well, why don't we turn it over to y'all right now? Looking forward to your presentation.
Absolutely. Just get the screen share going. All right. Again, Eric, thanks for having us. I'm Shafi Mustafa. I'm joined today by my colleague Albert Yu. We're with ElementalTV, and the topic of our discussion is really around the space on how publishers can best leverage audience-based monetization. We'll peel back some layers there and as we get into our discussion. So I want to just begin with a high-level introduction. As I shared, I'm Shafi. I'm joined with Albert, and we're with a company called ElementalTV. Elemental's been around since 2020. We've been developing innovative ad tech specifically for CTV publishers. We started our journey initially with a CTV ad server, yield monetization technology, and then we developed several innovative pieces of tech along the way, including things like creative ad formats, squeeze backs, ultimately a demand-side platform, and then most notably, and what we'll talk about today, we've spent a significant amount of time around audience technologies. And that brings us to our topic of discussion today, which is taking a deep dive look at challenges and opportunities around audience-centric models. And this is particularly important because we hear a lot of buzz about how advertisers, brands, agencies are looking for CTV audiences as a way to really overcome some challenges in the space that we'll get into. So 3 key things from our discussion today. First is why we believe that embracing and really leading with an audience model is key for publishers that want to maximize the revenue potential. Secondly, we'll talk about some strategies and tactics that publishers can deploy to effectively sell audiences. And then we'll also give a preview on some tools and technology that are in this space that range from giving you data visibility into audiences all the way down to commercialization of audiences. So with that said, let's get into our discussion. I'd like to begin with something that we call the CTV publisher iceberg. And when we think about this iceberg, above the surface, we hear a lot of great news about the growth of CTV, which it certainly has. Here in 2024, we've approached a place of critical mass where nearly 90% of all US households have one or more CTV device. Nearly 2/3 have 2 or more devices. And this results in over 2 hours of CTV viewership on a daily basis. So with this viewership, we've also seen corresponding ad dollars come into this space. In 2024, there's a forecast of about $30 billion in ad spend. This is up about 22% from 2023 numbers and forecasted to grow with a double-digit compound annual growth through 2030. So a lot of ad dollars coming into this space, and that trend is supposed to continue. But if we look below the surface, there are some critical challenges when it relates to that CTV audience. And first and foremost is this idea of audience fragmentation. In CTV, we see that there's an average of 7.3 apps used per US household, with nearly a third of these households having 10 or more apps. So an incredible amount of fragmentation in the space. And as a result of this fragmentation, we're seeing advertisers shift to more of an audience-based buying approach. In the ANA survey, 89% of marketers cited that they expect to see a significant shift to audience-based buying, while a third of them identified as a key part of their buying strategy today. So a significant amount of growth in audience-based buying forecasted in the coming years. And this below the surface is particularly a challenge when we realize that publishers today, CTV publishers, have really limited data, visibility, and the capabilities to deliver audiences. And that's really something that we want to talk about, how we can overcome those challenges. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about audience fragmentation, because that's the heart of the problem here. And I know we've heard that from a buzzword standpoint in the industry, but I want to really look deeply into how this impacts audience behavior and how publishers should be thinking about audiences. So when we think about audience fragmentation in CTV, you think about user behavior, where that user is not sticking to a single app or channel or destination, but likely traversing this broad landscape of content, wherever that content might reside. And what this ends up looking like from a number standpoint, on the previous slide, I cited these top two numbers about apps per household, but additionally, you have this complex landscape where there's a mix of linear and CTV households. About 42% of the households have both viewership. And then there's a co-viewer experience in CTV where you're not just watching by yourself, but often with others. And so this fragmented space makes household addressability highly challenging. And what this ends up looking like in our example here is we have a family of 4 with 3 shared household devices. And if you look at this viewing behavior across the day, it goes between various TVs across various platforms and channels. And if you're a publisher, trying to sell this green dot is highly challenging in this environment and often misaligned with the advertiser's expectation of activating against audiences, no matter where those audiences happen to be. So this is how that challenge of audience fragmentation really manifests itself in today's environment. From there, I want to take a look at the stages of this publisher growth and how this fragmentation and challenges with audiences manifest themselves. So first, I want to just highlight that, as I mentioned in our opening, at Elemental, we focus on working with CTV publishers, and these are a range of publishers. We work with app-based publishers who are really focused on getting installs as part of their growth model. More recently, we've been working with a lot of fast channel publishers. This seems to be the area where there's a lot of growth at. Then there's also content distribution publishers who have distribution rights to content and have unique monetization strategies. What we found is there's some common revenue models across these publisher types. Rev share seems to be the most prominent form that we encounter. And this is particularly found when we deal with fast channel publishers. Inventory share is often common with app-based publishers, as well as some late-stage fast channel publishers once they've established some brand equity. And then the buyback model is one that we see that's often underutilized. Buybacks are often found in conjunction with rev share models, where a publisher has an opportunity to participate in a last look model for unsold ad inventory. So this is often a good way for publishers to dip their toe into monetization without cannibalizing existing efforts. But when we look at these publisher types and rev models, we see some commonality based on the stage that a publisher is in. So if we begin at the earliest stage, this is when CTV publishers often have very limited traffic, a handful or a singular channel deployment. And on the monetization side, often there's these rev shares from channel carriage agreements, and the publisher is just at this stage is happy to be getting a check. There's no data insights that they're really gleaming, and monetization is really basic and not too many dimensions to it. Then from there, the early mid category is as we're building traffic, likely we're growing channels on multiple platforms, and we're continuing to grow that rev share revenue model, but we're also exploring other monetization opportunities. And this is where some ad ops needs start emerging too. So we're exploring options for ad operations. By that middle stage, we have a solid viewership base, and there's a reasonable amount of brand recognition around individual channels. That rev share revenue is stabilizing by this point, and you're likely receiving solicitations for demand and audience. You may have some limited audience data, but there's probably a significant amount of gaps there. And you're likely working with the managed ad ops team at this middle stage. By mid-large, viewership is approaching that critical mass. There's a wide portfolio of sub-channels. And on the monetization side, we're building our own direct and programmatic sales. There's a need for advanced yield management tools, and we're building ad ops in-house. And then finally, your largest publishers, these are ones with really significant audience pools, as well as significant brand recognition. There's managed ad ops and SSP demand that we're navigating through, as well as direct deals. And there's a need at this point to really integrate advanced data analytics. And so, as I referenced earlier, that across CTV publisher types and revenue models, we see these various stages. And as we'll get into in just a moment, there's unique tools and strategies that we would deploy based on the stage that a publisher is at. So that's a bit of a landscape overview. Pause here for just a moment as Albert comes in to talk about solutions. Eric, we'll segue over here.
Yeah, it's great model. I really appreciate that. I haven't seen that before. The publisher life cycle. It's a really cool overview of kind of the trajectory, I guess, of how publishers can and I guess often do continue to grow. One question that came up for me, and I want to invite our audience also, if you have any questions at this point, do drop them into the Q&A bin. Pick them up now and also throughout the presentation. As you're speaking about audiences, I was wondering, and maybe you'll cover this elsewhere in your talk, are there any standards for the way that audiences are classified or categorized so that they could be reported on and then, I guess, sold against, right? So if, I mean, you could think of it almost like a demo, but if somebody calls it male and someone else calls it man, those are two different words. Maybe they mean the same thing, maybe they don't. But if you're trying to buy across apps or across channels and you don't have a common taxonomy for audiences, how is that done?
Yeah, I can, Eric, I can take this. So it's real interesting that you bring that example up. So having right now there are taxonomies, or there are IAB taxonomies mainly for genres and genre categories on the contextual side of it of things, and that's kind of where we see two different lenses. Where there's a lot of focus on the publisher-centric side is what publishers have control over. Publishers have control over the genre of their content, the content titles, who's starring in it. They have all that contextual information that folks out there doing amazing work, like an Iris TV is tagging those things in a construct that makes it biddable by advertisers. That is one lens of the puzzle. So when you look at the other side of things, where publishers don't have real insights, and advertisers are the ones with insights, are from the demographic parts of it, the non content based signals that they have. You may be able to infer kind of the demographic part. Hey, this is an episode of Baywatch, or this is a hunting channel. You may infer, hey, the demographic might be male, and in that piece of it, it's a little more complex, where you need a little more advanced data tools, where a lot of the, I'll touch in on the solution side, but a lot of the fast channel publishers, or even app developers, they don't have any of that data. It involves, working with the DMP, getting a lot of these different pieces together to be able to understand, hey, who's really watching my channels, and not just the type of content that they're watching, but who are they? And we'll dive in that. And in terms of that part of it, the taxonomy is not really defined. It can be anything. Most of the time where they have standards is like, hey, I want to target P2 plus. That means any person's male or female 2 years and older. And those are the things where it's age and gender that they have a pretty set kind of shorthand taxonomy. If you're on the buy side, it's shorthand. But on the other aspects of, hey, are you in market for automobile? Are you, index highly for home and garden? Because a lot of these data management platforms, they have so much data about you, and your household, that they're able to target all things about kind of who you are and what you're watching. And when you're on a channel, it's just a manifestation of a biddable event that they can get an ad to. So
yeah, that's really interesting, and inspiring some thinking from me anyway, about some opportunities that could help support the industry. Assuming we could actually get the data, but I'll turn it over back to you, Albert.
okay.
Thanks so much, and talk to you in just a little bit.
Yep. Awesome. So yeah, we'll jump into kind of solutions. First, the critical questions asked as a CTV publishers matures across that life cycle. The one question you want to ask is, how is your inventory being sold today? How we've been blessed with having worked with publishers of all types. Starting at kind of the early kind of inflection point of CTV, where we've kind of grown with a lot of publishers and dealt with the growing pains, especially on the demand side, is how is inventory being monetized? What we've seen are, these publishers may start off early. They try to reach into SSPs, and they come back with, we really love your concept, your content, but you just don't have enough scale. So oftentimes, hey, you don't have enough scale, you fall into partners such as ad exchanges and resellers that may be able to bring your inventory into a larger pool to sell to SSPs, right? So that's kind of one model of aggregating scale. And then there are also managed ad op teams that say that you don't have a team that you want. You don't have an ad server yet, but there are folks out there that will help you explore your monetization. As Shafi said, one of the most underutilized aspects of the type of ability to monetize is, hey, if you're getting a rev share, it doesn't hurt to ask the platform that's carrying your channels. Hey, if you're unable to sell it, can you give me a buyback clause where I can buy back that inventory that the platform is unable to sell, and then I can get my third-party managed ad ops team to try to sell it to these ad exchanges and resellers and see if I can get incremental dollars. That's often a kind of a low risk option, and it won't cannibalize your existing revenue share, because the carriage partner is unable to sell it anyway. So that's Shafi said that's the best bet to really going into and exploring taking control of inventory without a lot of risk. And another question is, when you do get monetization from these different parties, whether it's an SSP, ad exchange, reseller, or even your own managed ad ops team, is what kind of insights do you get? Is there feedback? Do you know who is buying your audiences and the type of categories of these advertisers? Because that will give you a lot of information as to, hey, there's a reason why these advertisers may be buying it. It may be skewed toward QSRs only, or automotive, because a lot of the buyers use platforms that have these amazing targeting data segments that are able to lock on to why this particular household that's watching your content is valuable to them. And then last is, do you work with a lot of potential monetization companies that reach out? Do they tell you that they have a lot of demand, and then and their thing to ask you is, hey, can you add these 40 app ads.txt lines to to your app ads.txt? You really as a publisher, it may be awesome in the first couple of conversations where you're getting inbound requests from a lot of these potential monetization partners, but ultimately you want to see if they actually deliver. Do they deliver meaningful revenue? What we've seen is there are a lot of these groups out there that will try to approach publishers and get a massive number of app ads.txt lines in there just to what we call app ads.txt collectors. They're just out there getting the lines out, so in an event that they do in the future may be able to activate your your particular bundle ID or your app. They can generate some dollars, but oftentimes they're pretty just dormant, and these guys are just out there getting their lines added so they can say that they work with direct publishers. So there's a second a question is, what do you know about your audience? So getting deeper now, what type of data do you have getting back, that you get back from these monetization partners? Do they tell you anything about audiences? Are you getting the demographic data and behaviors and interests? Because these are the things that are going to be key to helping you merchandise your audiences to buyers. And why, hey, my channel has these amazing content, and these are the viewers and audiences that watch it, and they have these particular interests that makes the most sense for auto manufacturer or a home and garden advertiser, and that's one of the best ways to merchandise and get yourselves in front of everyone else that's just selling app names and app bundles. Those that's kind of what we define as kind of the the old school way, the original way. But as the CTV gets more advanced, and folks are now using more advanced buying techniques against it, a lot of these advertisers want highly biddable inventory, meaning the inventory that you have needs to be relevant. So they're bidding more. If you're just throwing old school shotgun approach, sending a bunch of traffic, whether it's highly relevant to that advertiser or not, those days are moving away as people are looking for more efficiencies. And knowing what advertisers are buying your audiences and on your channel is very important. It'll help you zero in on kind of the buyers that you want to go after. So supply addressability and seller-defined audiences. This is going to be kind of like the key concept. So supply addressability enables publishers to package and present their inventory in a way that makes sense to advertisers. So what we've seen is advertisers are always looking for scale, and the only way to and then having it relevant to them, which translates to biddable. Advertisers will only bid when it's a relevant audience target to them. So on the scale side, we have kind of some challenges as well, and these advertisers want to fill campaigns, so they're looking for large inventory volumes, and it's always been a challenge for smaller pubs, as you're getting started, and that's why you kind of default back to a rev share model with the publishing partner that's carrying your channel, because they're able to aggregate. We think of these partners that give you carriage as aggregators, because their channels are not all own and O and produced themselves. They rely on a lot of great publishers to give diverse content to these, and they aggregate, they package, and then they sell for you. But oftentimes they're unable to sell as well as if you were selling it yourself. So that goes into kind of making your packaging your inventory in a very targetable manner, so you can overcome kind of the limited visibility into your specific packages where buyers don't have much information. If you're just setting it out there, it may not be biddable, because no one knows what your bundle is if you're an app, or no one knows what your channel is. So you need to start building that brand equity. And when we kind of join all of this together, we want to promote a concept such as what we call seller-defined audiences. Seller-defined audiences is essentially just knowing how your audiences match to how buyers are buying. So when you look at an advertiser, they have a huge console of different segments. Whether if I'm let's say an automotive advertiser, I want to target males 18 to 35. That's in market for an automobile, using Polk Automotive data. And I also want them to potentially have a credit score of 700 plus for this particular campaign, so they can go to Experian, select all these things in their kind of DSP buy side console. So this is all the stuff that you never see as a publisher, and then SSPs and aggregators, they bring all the inventory to them, and then they see kind of where it matches up. So you're sending a whole bunch of traffic to them, being included in these large ecosystems, where these buyers will just start filtering and buying. What seller-defined audiences mean is, let's get you that data so you know exactly how your audiences index against these different kind of major third-party segments and demographics, and then package it yourself. So you can, instead of waiting for someone to filter your audiences to their buys, now you're just merchandising and making that available to them. It's like, hey, I got this amazing channel. It indexes high on males, indexes high on males 18 to 35, and it is indexes high with the Polk Automotive segment and the Experian credit score. You can actually able to do that if you have the right tools put together. And then when what we call curation is getting scale, is working with a lot of great CTV publishers, and then aggregating all that inventory into a curated seller-defined audience group to solve for that scale side of things. And then effective audience merchandising through data. So this will touch on the two sides of what data folks have. There's traditional targeting data, which is demographic, geographic, behavioral, intent based. This is on the side of what advertisers have access to. So advertisers look at that traditional targeting data that the publisher will never see, and we're trying to change that. And then on the other side, contextual relevancy data is everything that a publisher has. You know your channel, you know what network you're on, you know the genre, and you know the content titles. And what we're trying to do is to join these two pieces. And how this works is we're trying to, give publishers a look into your audiences through the lens of an advertiser. So, it's key to understanding what advertisers are buying and then delivering and packaging those audiences in an addressable manner. And this is going to be key in delivering, maximize revenue, standing out, in front of kind of the mass of, millions of ad requests. And it's just, hey, this is me here. This is my channel, and I know my audiences, they index high on these things, and this is why it's relevant to you as a buyer. So, some innovative tools for publishers. We jokingly say that this is not a sales pitch. This is just what we do. We've been, working with publishers for a long time, looking at the different models of monetization that work and don't work and kind of work. So, we want to help navigate challenges and leverage opportunities, right? With advanced tools that, take data context and then ultimately audience activation, because audience activation is initial, essentially just dollars for publishers. And the better these tools are, that you're able to employ, the more monetization you're going to be able to extract out of your audiences that are watching your content. So what we do is, we look at, we build AI-driven curation tools and build an audience insight graph for every publisher that is direct and works with. And it all starts with audience insights, is giving you a really bird's eye view of, like a console of your audiences. Who are they multifamily, leaning or singles? What's the age distribution, the income levels, all the way, to the basic data of, when are people watching, where are they watching, and what devices are they watching? And then the key part is, what third-party segments make the most sense, based off of the buyers that are buying from your audiences. Who are they? Why are they buying? And then giving that data of, hey, most of my folks that are watching are index high on these 10 key categories. So that's audience insight. It's the basis of how to merchandise your inventory. Then the smart curation part is, how do you take the insights that you have on your audiences and then sell it in a programmatic fashion through, curation and offering, really precise targeting. It's, hey, this is the curated package, not just this is a comedy genre, but this is the comedy genre for families, who are in, who are in market for home renovation, are in market for, online shopping, for, children's, clothing and toys. There's a lot of this data that's there, but it requires, a DMP integration that that most publishers, don't have the capability of doing themselves. These things manifest into, what we call the Vista 100 PMPs. It's just looking at what buyers are buying and bubbling that up, because you don't want to create packages that no one will buy. You want to create packages for folks that are already buying, and you're giving them a reason on why to buy, because it touches on all these things that they're targeting against. And Vista for publishers, it's a purpose-built kind of platform that we designed to have all these pieces in it that allows, publishers to, sell their own inventory directly, as well as, having a portal for self-serve. So yeah, that concludes kind of the initial kind of presentation. We'd love to hear from the audience about questions. I know we've kind of went through a lot, and maybe take a little time to digest.
Yeah, terrific presentation, actually. Thank you very much. I learned a lot and really interested in learning more about some of the things and how you do what you do. One question quickly from Tony Kanda over at Flix House. Are we able to watch this again? Too much good info here. Yes, you are. We recorded this, and Tony, it'll be available on our through our on-demand library to check out in the next day or so.
And Eric, I'll add, we geek out on audiences if you can't tell. So Tony, if you have questions, you want to talk deeper, we're happy to chat with you about anything you may want to go a little deeper on.
Yeah, that's terrific. And I would suggest that, yeah, those that are watching, get in touch with Albert and Shafi. If you don't know how to get a hold of them, get in touch with us because they are OTT.X members and we'll be happy to introduce you all. One question, I guess clarification. So I'm a publisher and I'm maybe live on a number of platforms, and I don't get data about who's watching my content. I have an idea who it is, but what you're saying is that you can come up with, I guess, a proxy for that based on what advertisers are buying, and those advertisers are buying certain audiences, and that's how you can infer who my audience is. Is that how this is working?
It's a multi-part approach. So we try to tackle it from both advertiser who's already buying because that's the best signal, right? Because there's a reason why they locked on to the audiences on your channels across these different distribution points. So we start there. We also can when we bring your inventory into our system, where we can monetize or it doesn't, if you're already using let's say you're on using a Publica or a SpringServe, no problem. We work with everyone. You just bring the signals into us. We can see, based off our buying data, who's buying, then, run through our data to our algorithms to see, what segments are these, reversing out what signals these advertisers are using to buy against your audiences. But we also have a device graph that we have. We have a very comprehensive device graph of about 400 million connected TV devices, and we can see how yours overlap against our device graph. And within that device graph, we already have all the device and audiences tagged with different indexes. Like we know this household has X number of devices in it, and they're in market for X, Y, and Z, and their demographics. So we just overlay your audience data on top of ours, and we see where that overlap is, and we present that. But that in itself is kind of data that's there. But the most relevant one is who's buying from you, and then taking those signals, because you want to give the buyers more of what they want, right? And you want to get in front of them. So oftentimes they may not see all of your inventory or your household. And what we're saying is you can make that available, saying, hey, you're only buying, this channel, but it's the same, type of audience that are watching on let's say Pluto TV versus Vizio or LG or whatever, right? It's the same content that spans across, and it's, more or less the same type of viewership. So you're missing this other stuff that you're not touching, and you make that available, and boom, it increases, more dollars to you as a publisher.
It's really smart, super interesting. Yeah, very clever way to go about it. And that is obviously it's an issue that a lot of our members have on the publishing side, is knowing who their audience is and knowing how what content's working, what content's not working, to help them develop more of the stuff that is working. And then I think there's probably a lot of surprises too. I was just thinking about it, like what if I had a vegetarian cooking channel, or maybe I was all about vegetarian cooking with my content offering. And of course, you'd expect there to be vegetarians that are watching your channel, but you might find that maybe you started seeing a lot of folks that recently had a heart attack or are at risk for heart failure or something, and because maybe it's they think it might be healthier, their doctors are recommending that they eat more vegetables, and so that might be a really valuable population for other products, not just vegetables or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
you heart attack.
It can translate into, I'm sure that medical data may not be on there, but it may translate to age brackets, right? For that vegetarian channel, it may surprise you that it indexes high for folks, 55 plus, as opposed to what you think are kind of maybe, younger health conscious folks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, a lot of the data we've seen is very eye-opening. When it comes out, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
cool, I can now market my my audiences in this way because I have the data. Because bear in mind, this is the same data that buyers use to target. So we're using similar data sets. So when buyers are saying, I want to target, this, and this, we use that same, but we're helping package that out, so buyers don't have to guess. I want to, buy 1835 male in market for automobiles with a credit score. What we're doing is, hey, we've seen this is a buyer of my audiences. I'm just gonna prepackage it and make the easy button so they don't have to filter out. It's like it's there. So you can, package things based off of how things are indexing, but ideally you get the signals from, hey, buyers are buying this, let's get them more of it, versus I have a lot of guys, audiences that are into kind of basket weaving, and I want to make a package. There may not be a buyer for that. So we kind of try to
Right.
balance the two.
So yeah, but maybe people that are into basket weaving are also happen to be into yoga.
Yeah.
And okay, well, yoga, like we can actually sell.
Yep.
You know a
Correct.
little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
You can get Lululemon and all those, right, to really double down on it. So it's essentially just merchandising it. I have data that shows indexes high in yoga. Maybe that it takes you down that rabbit hole of when you're looking at your audiences. Hey, yoga is one of the top spots. Let me go after this advertiser because I have data that shows it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Now, you touched on scale a little bit. That's obviously something that's important to advertisers, and it's important to publishers, right? So if you're kind of just getting started out, though, and you have, maybe enough content to make a channel, but maybe that's about it. And maybe you started out on YouTube, and now you're branching out and getting your content on some of the platforms. What would you advise if you do want to pursue the advertising route? What would be a step that you could start getting actual direct sales for your
Sure.
content?
So, Eric, if you think about the slide that we shared of the various stages of a publisher, and I should highlight that oftentimes, we had viewership at the top and we had monetization at the bottom, and those don't often synchronize. We often come across publishers that are at one stage from a viewership standpoint and another stage from a monetization standpoint, right? So when you're talking about early stage publishers and you're talking about audiences, scale is always a challenge. As Albert referenced, there's some things you can do around scale, like working with aggregators, SSPs. And then there's also curation-based models where your inventory is part of a larger audience pool, so it gets exposure. Where as a standalone wouldn't have the scale, especially once you layer in targeting or geo and so on, right? But as part of a broader audience pool, you're now able to be part of curated buys where you wouldn't have been originally.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
How
and
would
and I'll add to that, it's scale and recognition. How the traditional non-audience based buying is done at the moment is they whitelist. Hey, if you have a new app coming out and it's not on the whitelist on the buyer side of things, they don't know about it, it will never get bid on. So that's also another challenge is not having enough scale, but not being recognized in the buying
Wow.
ecosystem. So that's always a challenge. Any new up and coming app, we've seen a lot of there'll be zero bids because it's not whitelisted somewhere.
Hmm.
And the only buyers that are buying is people that are buying run of category, run of network.
Hmm.
Open market buying where they will buy anything if the price is right. So where you see a lot of these early stage publishers that want to start and they have their own kind of what their app name and app bundle that isn't widely known and they just initial is they're not going to the only way to get a lot of buyers in is by lowering the floors because when you have run of network buyers, they're not paying $18 or $20 for an unknown, untested app. They're bottom fishing, and that's where the alignment comes on the both the some demand and supply. The signal will be not from the app bundle or the app name or the genre. It's going to be price efficiency. It's going to come down to you have a $4 floor, cool. I'll just buy because I'm buying anything and everything, and my floor was I'm willing to bid at most $6. And if you bring the floor down, you'll meet the supply and demand curve, and you'll start activating. And that's one way of getting your app known to the system is let me sell it cheap so people see it in the radar, they're buying it, and then slowly raise the floors up as you get more
Right.
visibility onto the buy
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. So getting on that white list, how do you do that?
It's challenging, and that's why it should we're trying to roll them into audience-based buying, where it's a cloud of inventory that meets the
I see.
targeting requirements. So you no longer need to focus on the app name or the app bundle. It's you're looking for this group of audiences, there it is. We it's delivered to you. Don't worry about what app or channel because that's not relevant. You're looking for that particular audience segment with these different
Yeah.
profiles, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all that should matter.
Yeah. That actually that makes a lot of sense. Do you see trends or is there any kind of like um uh rhythm to or periodization to which audiences are getting bought across which time of year, time of day, or just over time.
For sure, Eric. So there's two types of audiences that we think about when it comes to seasonality, right? So you have what you call evergreen audiences. These are audiences that are largely relevant anytime. This might be male 18 to 35, for example, right? Or male plus sports. Like these are audience segments that we see common any time of year. Then there's others that are definitely seasonal, might be related to holidays, might be related to time of year or weather, for example, might be winter season, right? And there's things
Mm,
related to that. As Albert touched on briefly, we have something that we call the Vista 100 PMPs, and this is a dynamic ranking of the 100 categories that we're seeing at any given time, the greatest buying activity happening. And what you might see for that Vista 100 in March or April, there is some variance when you're looking at it in October or November for sure.
mhm. Yeah, and I imagine that the telemetry is getting better and better, and the granularity of the data that you're able to parse is getting better and better as well over time, and probably bringing out highlights or highlighting opportunities for buying and potentially for creating whole new um, content offerings that are targeting specific audiences.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think yeah, for sure. What you're coming is that conclusion of using data to figure out content, right? Alignment of
Yeah.
content. what makes the most dollars that people are also wanting to watch is going to be that magic that magic thing that someone will figure
Yeah.
out, and it's coming together. As we looked at, there is great contextual data signals are already coming through. Now we're just, we're bringing the non contextual side, but the behavioral and intent and demographic into it and joining it, and then and then it gets further refined by geos, the standard stuff as well. But when you bring all those pieces into play, it's you're gonna be able to activate more and then know what content is resonates with the audiences and how to get more of those audiences that make money.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of spidey sense that's always kind of gone into that. Like I think this kind of, I can sense in the world right now or in the country right now, this is content that's gonna resonate, but you don't know. All of a sudden something like Squid Games comes up and catches everybody by surprise. How come nobody expected that? And all of a sudden, it kind of takes the lid off and provides opportunities to explore whole new concepts in content licensing or creation that hadn't really been thought of with specific audiences before.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure there's still plenty of room for that, but data always helps.
Yeah, for sure. And even, not taking into account for, using it to find new types of content, but just having that base, being able to optimize and get more yield out of what, a publisher has created so they can invest, right,
Yeah.
in more content and take chances and create more channels and get distribution. Like, we want to help with that. Let's get more revenue to publishers so they can, build out more sub channels and
Yeah.
have more wider reach across many genres.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question. If you were going to give one piece of advice for publishers that may not be working with you yet, what might it be?
Good question, Eric. I can start, and Albert, you might have a different answer as well. This actually relates to your last question a bit, where you think about the rich data that's coming out in the audience space, right? Historically, all the data, the majority of the data has been on the buy side. We've had this concept of audience-based buying. But the other side of that coin is audience-based selling, right? Audience-based monetization. So for the publishers that are in the audience that are really curious about, okay, how do I come up with a audience-based monetization strategy for myself? It's really important that you start by understanding why advertisers are buying you. Why are those dollars coming in? What's of interest, right? Follow that data. And as you touched on, it'll open doors from a content perspective. It'll open doors from an ad side. But really spend some time with that lens of the advertiser and try to understand how a brand and advertiser sees you, and then optimize based off of what the data is leading you towards.
Mhm. Perfect.
Yeah. And I'll add to what Shafi says. The entry point for that, if you're a early stage advertiser, and, who's solely reliant on rev share, exercise that buyback. See if that's a consideration that your carriage partner can give you, and then work, because you need to get signals from your own traffic to be able to glean insights into, and having access to trying to monetize your own traffic through a buyback opportunity is the first step in leveraging any sorts of monetization, whether you just want to dip your toe in it or get this kind of read on your audiences. The first step is you need access to your own and operated inventory, and the best way to do that is go with buyback, see if the partners will entertain that, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great advice. All right, well, we're about at time. Albert, Shafi, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Great presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone here, our dear audience, for attending. for your continued support of OTT.X. As always, the session was recorded and it's going to be available on our website at OTT.X.org with an impressive collection of presentations from online and in-person events over the last few years. Speaking of that, we just concluded, as many of you know, the OTT.X X-Fronts. That was last week on Tuesday. A bunch of those presentations are getting processed right now, and I want to invite everybody to go watch those again or for the first time if you haven't had a chance to get out there. If you're an OTT.X member, those will be available complimentary to you. If you're not a member, it's a good reason to investigate becoming one. You can reach out to me or to info@OTTX.org, and we'd love to talk to you about some of the many benefits of becoming members of OTT.X. That concludes our webinar today. Thanks again for joining us and for being a part of the OTT.X community. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one. Bye.